This year, the theme for International Women's Day is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in the COVID-19 World. It celebrates the tremendous efforts by women and girls around the world in shaping a more equal future in recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and highlights the gaps that remain. Women are still underrepresented in public life and decision-making, and this year's International Women's Day is a campaign for generation equality to act for an equal future for all. Women advocate and founder Live Abundantly, Dr. Ama Onyerima, joins me here in the studio to make sense of all of these. Great to see you.
Great to see you as well.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I also have the co-founder, Royal Nursing Consult, Julie Mobo, joining me on Skype. Julie, good morning.
Good morning.
And happy Women's Day.
Thank you.
Great, great. Now let's start from the studio. Now, talking about women in leadership, the point there is, over the years, decades ago, the belief that leadership, rulership, being in front and being heard was a man's thing, as if God packaged man and gave him, okay, you can take it on behalf of others. But we are realizing now with knowledge, with modernity, that is not, when God did that, it was just humanity. He gave it to not one gender against other. But how is this changing now? Because we're hearing more voices of women across the world right now. How is it changing from what used to be a few decades ago?
Well, let me start with a history of International Women's Day.
Right.
It is 210 years since the first group of women in Europe, in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, got together and decided that they were going to speak up for the rights of women and, of course, start campaigning for votes. So 210 years ago,
Wow.
1911, when all of this began. And then you fast forward to 1975, when the UN began to recognize International Women's Day. So 46 years ago, when we came onto the platform as this is a time or a day for us to recognize the contributions of women. Things have improved, but unfortunately the pandemic has washed it away. It is unfortunate that people have taken the good books to be the books by which they govern life and the way they treat women. But the reality is that we have to accelerate gender parity. When you look at the current pandemic we're going through, 70% of the frontliners, the caregivers, are women. And women have taken on additional responsibilities throughout this period, not just being staff members or team members in their jobs, but also taking care of their children, taking care of loved ones, and at the same time, being responsible for everything else beyond what they were normally doing. So when you look at the disparity, it becomes even more poignant right now when women are leaving their jobs because they have to be at home to homeschool their children. They have to take care of the family, yet they're struggling to put food on the table, especially for rural women or single mothers. And when you look at the government, you see the disparity there. I mean, 25% of parliamentarians globally are women, but in Nigeria, the figures are even more dismal. 7 women out of 109 senators, 13 women in House of Reps opposed to 360. Compare those numbers to other countries. I mean, look at South Africa, 43%, Uganda, 35%.
Even Rwanda doesn't even have more women than men, which is a good thing.
There you go. But we know that when women are in these positions of decision making, they take into account the things that are necessary, not just for the government to run, but for the society and the community to function. They take into account health, they take into account education, they take into account climate change. I mean, that is a huge issue that we're not even beginning to touch on.
All right, let me bring in Julie in here to give us her perspective to this. Julie, the point there is we've been talking about women in leadership for so many years now, even so many decades now. But if we look at the kernel, the crux of the issue, what are the ideals that we're looking at? What can change? What would be that difference when we have more women on board?
Thank you very much, Michael. what we need to see, what will bring about this change will have to start from the orientation, the mindsets that the society has as to what the roles and the responsibilities and functionalities of the woman is. It is interesting to know that women are beginning to realize that their functions is not restricted to the bedroom and the food department in their family conglomerate. So you see, the family is even huge. If we understand what that concept is, we will want to maximize the functions of the woman. So if we have to see a change, we need to go back to the roots. And what is the roots? The family is the minutest fraction of the society. It is the unit of the society. So we need to go back there. And when I say go back to the family, it's not to start training those who are going to be given birth to. We want to go to every institution, organization, the religious institutions. We need to get into the schools to start educating the men, the women, the boys, and the girls to understand that we are grossly underutilizing or exploring the capabilities that the woman has. So it has to do with a situation of changing the orientation, changing our mindset, changing the narrative, changing the perspectives, and then making up our minds to make use of the woman's brains. Now, we have heard so many comments passed on by reputable people, those that are highly respected and regarded. And when these people spill out words, it is taken hook, line, and sinker. We've heard phrases like "women have fish brains" when a driver drives wrongly on the road or recklessly or is trying to reverse. They say, "Oh, women are driving." There are those comments that needs to be changed. And in order to change that, we need to visit institutions, organizations, schools, and families and carry on this new narrative.
I totally agree with you. There are sometimes, like she mentioned, on the road, when you see someone drive in a certain way and then something happens and they check, and incidentally, it's a woman. Oh, is a woman. You know, that kind of a statement, it's really embedded. But let's leave that. Let's come to women helping women.
Mm-hmm.
In your organization, for instance, Live Abundantly, at least I've witnessed where you have created a platform to advocate for women, not just women, but everybody, but specifically for women. Women have benefited a lot from what you do, giving them a voice, giving them a platform, and giving them opportunities. You are just one. There are so many other women out there who can do the same. But when it comes to women helping women, how much of that is gaining grounds?
Well, I would like to start by saying the biggest thing we have to do, the most important thing we have to do to change the mindset is to challenge the biases, challenge the inequity, challenge the stereotypes, going back to the car that you just mentioned. When you challenge those, then you can begin to see a change in the system. Now, women have been socialized, unfortunately, in a particular way within this society, which you don't see in other societies. But if we stay in this society, it is important for us, as the other lady spoke, Julie, I believe is her name, that we must change our thinking. We must change our perception of women. But women themselves must embrace women into positions of leadership, and they must embrace the importance of making this change, not just for themselves, but for their children, particularly the girl child. Many girls will not return to a classroom by the time this pandemic is over because they are now needed in their families to work, or they've been married off. So when you see that change, it leaves a gap. There is a gap in thinking. There is a gap in the system. And what we must do is educate, re-socialize, and rethink about how we're going to incorporate women into all spheres of life. And it starts at a very young age. When you start by teaching young girls and boys that they're equal, that equity is important, so access to education, access to informal sector of training, access to resources, then you begin to see the shift that is necessary. Without that, we're just carrying on with the system as it is.
Okay.
And then we have to, of course, look at all the various laws that limit women. Not having an equity bill limits women. Not passing the VAT bill limits women. Not really enacting the child rights law limits children, but particularly the girl child.
All right. I'm going to ask both of you, but let me start with Julie here. Now, we as Africans, or maybe Nigerians, we are very cultural people, and we are also very religious people as well. When it comes to these phenomena, the two of them have very strong hold on the people that we are. How is this helping or compounding the situation we are talking about right now? Julie.
Thank you very much. Yes, let me begin from your introductory statement. You said something about the mandate that was given. It wasn't given to the male man, it was given to humanity, which consists of both the man and the woman. So that is the beginning, that's the bane, that's the foundation of our problem, where we misinterpret that mandate. I did a short survey at some point, and I asked men. I was going to speak on a program that I was hosting about 2 years ago. It was about the functionality of the man and the woman in the home setting. So I asked about 10 men. I said, what is your greatest need as a family man? What is that deepest desire that you have? Of all the 10 of them responded, my greatest need is to see my family comfortable, is to get them what they want, when they want it, how they want it. So it had to do with provision. Then I asked them another question. So how are you achieving this? They said, oh, they've got to work. And most of them are working. So how about your wives? They are at home. They have to take care of the children. I said, so aren't you subjecting your family to a life of below average? Aren't you extending the time to achieve these desires by not working with your wife or teaming up with your wife or allow your wife to find full expression? And it got them thinking. So we need to, first of all, understand that concept, that mandate was given to humanity, which is the male and the female. And then the same configuration of the man's brain is what the woman has, just that the expressions are different. So that she thinks differently than you does not mean that her thinking is inferior. So it is actually compounding the problem, because the same word for those who are Christians, that same word says that my word is made of no effect because of tradition. So of what use is tradition? Of what use is cultural practices if it makes one person feel less than a human being, if it does not allow that person find full expression of their potentials? So it's not really helping in a sense. And I would say that I am glad that we have so many men speaking up, especially with our iconic model, which is Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. I've gone on social media, I have read about people's responses, I have seen men talk. Now they are beginning to realize that, okay, I need to let my wife do this and do that. There's more to her than just being a wife and a child, a wife and a mother. So they're beginning to realize that. So when we talk about tradition and cultural practices, we need to reverse it on the foundation on which these things are built. And then how far has it helped us? How far has it gone? How far has it helped us in achieving our desires? What contributions are we making as a result of these beliefs that we have held for so long? Can we change it? Change is constant. Can we try another means? So we need to look at this and also look at what is happening in other climes. Are there women in powerful positions? What have they been able to achieve? Let's check our history. Let's check what is happening in other nations and then see that, okay, let's us look at competence. Who the cap fits, let him wear it. If it fits a woman, let her wear the cap.
I totally agree with you. If it fits a woman, why not? Let her wear it. We're talking about deliverables here, not the gender. Now, there's something Julie, you said is really interesting. We've heard so many parents who say, oh, we'll train our children our daughters to become like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. We remember that many years ago, football was played by people who are seen not to be serious in life. But now parents are encouraging their children, because now football is very lucrative out there. In fact, they're encouraging their children. Now, thank you, Juliet, for that. Now, let me come to you. I was asking the same question. How has have our cultures and religion helped or not help us when we're talking about emancipating or putting the woman on the table or on the burner where the men are?
Yes. Well, thank you for that question. The reality is it has hampered the progress of women. When you go back to the history of women in Nigeria, pre-colonialism, women were part of the society. Women had an active role. Women were decision makers. The advent of colonialism changed the makeup of the family because it was imported over here. Christianity says the man is the leader, but prior to that, women were taking care of themselves and going to their farms and educating their children into the best of their knowledge with their informal skills. But all of that changed. So we really need to look at what are we going to do to make sure that women and men are on equal footing. And that starts with accessibility, access to education, access to resources, access to skills, access to decision making at the table, but more importantly, equal pay, equal access to health. All of these things help to alleviate the sufferings of women, but at the same time give them the platform from which to grow, from which to become the leaders that they are capable of, and they are, and give them more visibility. And we have to acknowledge the contributions of women. The work that women do outside of the workplace is not monetized. That work is time expended, energy expended. That is invaluable work. And that work must be recognized in and out of the home, plus the work and the contributions they make publicly and privately. It's important.
Really interesting. Julie, let me ask you this before we go now. We're looking at our time. Do you think we all as a people have an understanding of how we're supposed to complement each other? Because if you go out there from the stories we hear, especially on a day like this, it looks like there is a battle of gender, the men against the women, these men versus the women or women versus the men. Sometimes it looks like that, as if the right and the assertiveness of women seem to be combative against the men. Do we really have an understanding of what this thing stands for, or what we are really talking about as a people?
Okay, so thank you, Michael. I will say that we're still on a journey in understanding how to complement one another, and I would still take it back to the marital institution. So I attended a wedding, like I think it was about 2 weeks ago, where the preacher throughout his message did not make mention of wife, be submissive to your husband. Now that's a CD that is being played, that has been played over the years, and it's even cracking. So you hear this as soon as you're officiating a wedding. The message you hear is that when your husband goes to work and then returns, make sure you have the water ready for him. There's this dictation of what the woman should do, how she should be. There isn't as much as to how one can complement the other. So the man is seen to be the forerunner, is seen to be the head, is seen to be the knowledgeable, the one who has to go for his career first, and all of that. And the woman's position and her responsibilities are predetermined, and she's told that from the wedding. So she goes into building that home. She passes on that same narrative to her children. So when her daughter wants to forge ahead, wants to break barriers, she's saying, this is not how you're going to get married. Who is going to marry you? You can't have a house now. You can't buy a car now. So we have not learned, or we are still learning. We are still far from coming to the full knowledge of how to complement one another. Another thing, narrative that we pass on, we hear oftentimes, even within that same family setting, is that when the woman suggests something to her partner or her spouse, the man goes on to say, oh, this is what I did. And we hear preachers say, he may not say that his wife gave him that suggestion. He may not say it was his wife's idea. That's how men are. Just accept it like that. That needs to change. So if a wife suggests something to the husband should say, oh, my wife said this. Were it not for my wife, we would not have been able to come this far. I was at this position. But when she brought in her financial intelligence, we were able to start saving and we were out of debt. I
All
think
right.
the right decision should go to whom it's due.
All right, Julie Mobo, thank you so much for your insight into this. Just in 30 seconds before we go, how do we change this narrative and what steps do we need to take now?
Well, we have to recognize the contributions of women, the achievements of women. We have to support women in the work that they do in and out of the home. And women must learn to collaborate. And through collaboration, we can achieve gender parity, which we're told could be 180 years away, but hopefully sooner by deconstructing the system.
We hope it will be 180 years away. Thank you very much, Dr. Amanyerima, the founder of Live Abundantly, and we thank you for what you do and what you're doing for humanity and for women as well. Thank you.
I thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Julie Mobo, for talking to us this morning as well. We thank you for what you do as well. Thank you very much.